Hi, friends. I'm very, very excited to share with you an analogy that I came across that truly helped me stop overthinking, stop overanalyzing, and overcomplicating everything in life. I noticed that whenever we tend to be very stressed or become very, very anxious or fearful, I noticed that there's a direct correlation between our fears, our anxiety, depression, or just negative feelings in general. There's a direct correlation between those negative feelings and the amount of overthinking we're doing in the moment. And that's what I discovered to be the root of everything. And I asked myself, if I were to reduce the amount of thinking that I have, does that also reduce the amount of anxiety that I have? And you can ask yourself this very simple question to discover if this is true for you. When you're very stressed and anxious, how much thinking is going on in the moment? And inverse the question. When you are the happiest or most at peace with yourself, how much thinking is going on? From those questions, you'll probably discover that thinking seems to be the root of everything. And it's either the root of anxiety or the root or the root of peace. And when I say root of peace, I mean not thinking. And one of the most common questions I get when I describe this concept is, well, how do you just stop thinking in general? Like, how do you just have no thoughts? And there's a big distinction between not thinking and not having any thoughts. Non-thinking doesn't necessarily mean that you're having no thoughts. It means that you're not attached to any thoughts that come through your mind. And that's very important because it's almost impossible to stop all thoughts in general. But thoughts are, like I said in one of our previous videos, thoughts themselves are harmless unless we give it our attention, unless we believe them to be true. All of us have probably had the majority of the same thoughts. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart. I'm not intelligent. Nobody loves me, or I'm going to be alone. All of these different thoughts, every single person has had these thoughts. But how is it possible that if every single person has had these same thoughts, how is it possible that we all have different outcomes in life? How is it possible that one version of ourselves or another person is stuck in anxiety and depression and another person's able to thrive despite having these thoughts? And it comes back to whether we believe those thoughts to be true or not. And the core makeup of belief is attention. Whatever we give our attention to, specifically what thoughts we give our attention to, that grows. Where energy flows, things grow. And it's very empowering to see how this is true. And one of the biggest reasons why we continually overthink, and again, this is not really our fault, but more about how we've been conditioned. But just because something is not our fault doesn't mean that it's not our responsibility. Most things in life we can't control, but we can always control our beliefs and which thoughts we want to feed or which ones we want to starve. And the analogy that I wanted to bring up is that our minds are like a garden and our thoughts are like seeds. Our attention is like a water that we would give to those seeds. So in this garden, we can't always control what seeds come into it. For example, birds can fly by and drop down seeds. Different animals like squirrels or chinchillas or whatever, like deer, can drop seeds within our garden bed. We can't always control those things. Yes, we can mitigate that by putting up fences and putting up a greenhouse and things like that. But we can't prevent everything from getting into that garden. There's always going to be something out of our control that drops those random seeds in there. And those seeds can be positive or negative. And a lot of the times when we cannot control it, it typically pops up as negative seeds. But that's not necessarily bad, because if a seed drops into our garden, that seed doesn't always become a plant. And that's because we can control which ones we water. So if we don't water those negative thoughts or those negative seeds, they don't germinate and blossom into a plant. But we can water the other seeds that we do want to grow and blossom and create all sorts of wonderful either flowers or vegetation for us. So we can't control the seeds that pop up, but we can always control which ones we water. That's the core concept that I always want to go back to. And how we can actually do this in our lives is by controlling our attention. One of the greatest abilities that we've been given as humans is consciousness, but consciousness comes down to the ability to be able to choose where we put our attention. So in life, as we're going and navigating and sort of interacting with the world, when we come across certain events we cannot control that seem negative or that create these negative thoughts in our minds, what we can do is neutralize it. We want to first separate the event versus our thinking about the events, because there's two types of things going on here. Every single event in the world is inherently neutral. It only becomes negative to us specifically when we judge it, when we put our own opinions on it. And that is what creates this negative thought, which turns into a negative feeling. And that will in turn create negative behaviors that cause us a lot of suffering. So that's when we'll spiral and either go back to some sort of addiction or close ourselves in, cut people out of our lives, or just don't allow anything to come in anymore. And that's our defense mechanism, right? And that's something that we learn to do, but that we can unlearn. Because if we end up blocking ourselves out, building up walls around our heart and in our lives, we inevitably cut people out. We cut out love as a byproduct. We cut out joy. We cut out peace because we're always on guard. We're always going out into the world cautious and scared and afraid of what might happen. And it's not a fun way to live when we're doing that. And it's very difficult to find peace when we're constantly paranoid about what may happen to us. So what I'm proposing is looking at the things that happens in our lives in real time and seeing, is this just a neutral event? And what is my own personal thinking that I'm putting onto this event? If we texted somebody, they didn't text back. If our parents said something to us, those things are inherently neutral. Whatever event that happened, that is what it is. And whether what we believe about that event, that's ours. That's our responsibility. And we can't change that. For instance, if someone called us a specific name or made fun of us in some way or didn't call us back, whatever that event is, that is the actual event. What we think about ourselves is a different story. So if someone made fun of us and then we say to ourselves, we're not good enough, or we're unintelligent, or that we're unlovable, that event did not say those things about us. Those were just events that happened. And now our thinking is what creates this suffering in our own identity. But once you come to understand that we don't have to believe those things, you're free. And many times we hold on to these negative thoughts and this negative thinking because we want the approval of someone else. We want to feel loved. We want to feel enough. For example, if we're doing some things that our friends, families, colleagues don't approve of, or they don't like necessarily, we only suffer because we want to be liked by them. And we only have that need within us if we don't already love ourselves. And that's why everything always comes back to ourselves. If we don't love ourselves first, it's very difficult for us to receive love from others. We'll actually block it off. And we self-sabotage in that way. Because if we don't love ourselves, then we're always going to be thinking in the back of our mind, this person may not like me, they may not love me, they may leave me. And all those fears and anxieties stem from us not being at peace with ourselves. So, In short, I know we kind of went on this sort of long tangent, but I say all of this to describe a very, very simple truth that where our attention goes, energy flows. Which thoughts are you giving your attention to? And which thoughts do you want to stop giving your attention to? Ask yourself, is this thinking useful? Is this helping me? Is this promoting peace, love, and joy in my life? And if it's not, make the decision to stop putting your attention onto those thoughts. It's literally as simple as that. And when you start doing that, you'll begin to discover that it's actually very scary to do that, because we don't know what's going to happen next if we let go of that thinking. If we keep thinking about events in a negative way or thinking about ourselves in a negative way, we know what's going to happen. We know how we're going to feel. That's familiar to us. But as soon as we stop doing that, what does that mean? And the reason why we're afraid is because that's the unknown. But the unknown is a safe place and a space where infinite possibilities exist. And it's only in the unknown where a possibility for a new life, a different life, a life where we're experiencing peace, love, and joy exists. Everything we want is on the other side of the unknown. And the way to enter the unknown is to let go of the thinking that is causing us our suffering.